Well, good morning, guys. Today I want to talk about why the news media, especially digital media, seems to cover YouTube so poorly. And I think that's two main reasons. One, living and working in New York City and knowing people at basically every single modern digital media company you can think of. ATTN, Business Insider, Vice, Fox, BuzzFeed, Bloomberg, NBC, Fox. I'm forgetting, other ones. Mike, although Mike's gone. Basically, I know a person or people that work at every digital media company, and we talk. And one is that most of them do not really watch YouTube themselves. That's just not the way they grew up, and they don't really understand YouTube. So they're not that interested in it. So part of the reason why the media covers YouTube controversies so poorly, and when I mean poorly, I mean they don't really get the frames and angles right. Their headlines are iffy, are dramatized, sensationalized. They're behind the curve on a lot of things that happen on YouTube. Is because they're just not on YouTube. They're not watching YouTube. But the second is that the people, the journalists at media companies that are covering YouTube, like the YouTube beat, let's take like The Verge. Like, why does The Verge, which is part of Vox, or the Daily Beast, cover YouTube so poorly? And when I mean cover YouTube poorly, why do they cover it with such a lack of context that often doesn't elucidate any of the serious issues that are at play? And part of that is because the people that do cover YouTube at these media companies, that's their beat. And whether that's their beat because they're interested in it or because they found success covering that beat and then they just continue to cover it, I'm not sure. Often what happens is you climb through the ranks at a media company, and as you climb through the ranks, if you have a successful story on something, let's say you wrote about PewDiePie, back in 2015, and that story was successful, your editor might be like, oh, that's your beat. You should keep writing about like YouTubers. And so they're always on the hunt for a controversy on YouTube. And when they do, they often have a tendency to look at it through a very like New York City, East Coast, elitist, liberal ideology. Which is why you get this kind of coverage of like PewDiePie, for instance, that always seems to be, he's anti-Semitic. He uses the N-word. He's promoting anti-Semitic content again. He's doing this again. He's in hot water for this. Without any real appreciation for the larger ecosphere or ecosystem that like he lives in on YouTube, and that like the content he's creating to his audience. And that's because like once those journalists, have their beat on like PewDiePie or YouTube, then their goal just becomes impact, views, numbers, and they want to impress their colleagues, right? So it becomes less about getting the story super accurate and getting a story out quick with a catchy headline that's going to generate a lot of impact. Impact's like kind of the important word. And when I mean impact, it means like it gets a lot of views and gets a lot of clicks and drives a lot of traffic to the site concurrently. That really makes you look good among your peers. So people that are covering YouTube, when there's YouTube controversy, they have a tendency to just go for the angle that'll give them the most impact, that'll drive the most clicks or traffic to their site. And often that has to do with the kind of, the setup of like either a YouTuber tweeting something or saying something off the cuff in a video. Or they'll go through and mine videos, much like they'll go through and mine Twitter accounts and try to establish some sort of narrative about who this individual is. But that's I think why you see such poor coverage of like YouTube topics from modern digital media companies. like The Verge. It's not so much that I don't think the writers are bad writers per se or bad journalists. I think the system incentivizes a creating of content that isn't so much like contextual and accurate and fair as it incentivizes content that will generate clicks and headlines, because that's how you impress your colleagues in the newsroom and how you impress other media companies if you want to, leverage that and join a different media company with maybe making more money. You can say, hey, look at all these, articles I did that got so many clicks and views. So that's what I would say to, like, why does the Verge and the Daily Beast, the two big offenders I think here, have a tendency to just go after YouTubers perpetually. One, a lot of them, it winds up being their beat to kind of look for those controversies on YouTube. So they're kind of, just sitting there waiting for something to happen. And when they do, they can write up something quick. And they're writing it from an ideology that fits a narrative that they think will appeal to their audience and that will, bring them esteem with their colleagues in their newsroom. And esteem just really means numbers, right? Like, if we take apart the Wall Street Journal piece that was done on PewDiePie a year ago or longer, it generated a lot of impact, right? And so the way that's viewed in a newsroom is actually positive. Not so much like, well, were all these clips taken out of context? It was enough that they could construct a narrative and generate impact, and it got a lot of clicks and got a lot of views, and that is ultimately the game on some level, because they can sell that to advertisers on the back end. So media companies will support journalists that do that, for the most part, as long as they're not outright lying. But you can get away with quite a bit on YouTube with decontextualizing things if you're going to generate clicks and views for that media publisher company. Anyway, that's just like the thought for today. You can take it or leave it. It's just one, they don't really understand YouTube. I can just tell you from living in New York City and working right in the heart of digital media, most journalists don't really watch YouTube or understand it. And then two, once a journalist has their beat as YouTube, then it just becomes like, how can I generate the most amount of articles possible and have those articles have the biggest reach? And often that's, a snazzy headline for people that also don't really watch YouTube, right? Maybe the audience is older and, they're not really trying to capture the people that are watching PewDiePie videos. Their audience, like the Wall Street Journal's audience, is much older. And so they're gonna write it in a way that they think will get older people to click. And that's incentivized by the systems that exist in newsrooms, because they want impact. So yeah, anyway, just a thought, guys. Have a good morning. And as always, if you're in the market for a sweatshirt, nice high quality, $30, always be plugging.